What if your golden years in 1347 meant a new kind of purpose? Do you ever wonder how wisdom and experience were valued centuries ago, especially for those past their youthful vigor? Number 8. The tranquil duties of a bell ringer's assistant. In the bustling, often chaotic medieval town, the rhythmic toll of bells served as the heartbeat of daily life. These weren't just musical chimes. They were the medieval clock, the alarm, the announcement system, and the call to prayer. A main bell tower often dominated the skyline of any significant settlement, its mighty bells weighing hundreds, sometimes thousands of pounds. The principal bell ringer held a respected, if somewhat deafening position. However, the demanding physical nature of pulling the heavy ropes, especially for extended periods, meant that assistance was frequently needed. This is where the role of the bell ringer's assistant often found a perfect fit for individuals who had perhaps seen many seasons pass. These assistants were not typically tasked with the brute force pulling of the largest ropes that demanded youthful strength and stamina. Instead, their duties centered around the more delicate, precise, and routine aspects of the bell tower operation. One primary task involved the maintenance of the bell ropes themselves. These ropes, often made of hemp, were vital links between the ringer and the massive bronze instruments above. They wore out, frayed, and needed constant inspection. An older individual, perhaps, with hands accustomed to knot tying or meticulous work from a previous trade, would spend hours checking the ropes, feeling for weaknesses and making minor repairs. This required a steady hand and a keen eye, not brute strength. Replacing a full rope was a bigger job, but small patches and preventive care could extend the life of these expensive pieces of equipment significantly. A historical account from a local parish record in Canterbury, circa 1390, mentions payments made to Old Thomas, the rope tender, for his diligent work in the bell tower, suggesting a specific, less strenuous role. Another crucial duty was the preparation of the bells themselves. While the bell casting process was an engineering marvel, the bells needed regular cleaning and, occasionally, lubrication of their moving parts. Dust and grime accumulated within the tower, and the bell's clappers, the internal hammers that struck the bronze, needed to be kept in good order. This work often involved climbing the spiral stairs of the tower, but once there, the task was about careful cleaning and applying animal fat or specialized grease to the pivot points of the clappers and the mounts. It was a precise operation, requiring a calm demeanor and attention to detail to avoid damaging the instrument or slipping on the often dusty and uneven wooden platforms within the tower. The quality of the bell's sound was paramount, and a sticky clapper could ruin the intended rhythm of the calls. The bell ringer's assistant might also be responsible for ensuring the tower was accessible and secure. This involved sweeping the stone steps, checking the integrity of the wooden ladders leading to higher levels, and locking the heavy oak door at the base of the tower at the appointed times. It was a role of trust and reliability. The tower often housed valuable bells, and its security was taken seriously. A long-serving and dependable individual, perhaps known to the community for decades, would naturally inspire confidence in such a gatekeeping role. Their presence within the tower, even if not actively ringing, served as a deterrent to mischief or theft. Furthermore, these assistants sometimes acted as a secondary timer for the main bell ringer. Medieval towns often used water clocks or ore glasses, but these were prone to error and required constant monitoring. An experienced assistant, perhaps with a lifetime of observing the sun's position or the stars, could provide a more natural, intuitive sense of time, cross-referencing it with the mechanical devices. When the bell ringer was momentarily absent or needed to rest, the assistant might be tasked with lighter, pre-programmed chimes, perhaps signaling the midday meal for the monastery or a specific evening curfew for a smaller, less strenuous bell. This often involved pulling smaller, less heavy ropes or operating simpler counterbalanced mechanisms that did not demand the full physical commitment of the main ringing. A monastic register from St. Albans Abbey in the early 1400s notes a specific entry for Brother Alaric, venerable of years, whose duty was to ensure the exact timing of the hourly chimes, using a small hand-operated bell in the cloister, a task that required precision and patience above all else. The sound of the bells carried far across the fields and into the surrounding countryside, communicating vital information to farmers and travelers alike. An assistant might also be responsible for understanding and interpreting these various signals. A certain sequence of tolls could mean a fire, another a death, yet another a market day. Memorizing these distinct patterns and knowing when to alert the principal ringer of a specific event occurring outside the immediate vicinity of the town was a role that benefited from a lifetime of observation and a keen memory. It was not a job that required quick sprints or heavy lifting, but rather a quiet, reliable presence and an understanding of the rhythm of medieval life. The assistant became a part of the tower's living memory, a steady hand in the daily operations of an essential community service, ensuring the continued clear voice of the town's timepiece. Number 7. The gentle art of the poultry keeper or dairy assistant. While often overlooked in grand histories, this steady production of food was the bedrock of medieval society. Even small manors, monasteries, or urban households often maintained a small flock of chickens, ducks, or geese, and, for those with more land, a cow or a few goats for milk. These tasks, though vital, were not always physically demanding in the way that field plowing or heavy construction might be. For an older person, particularly one with a lifetime of experience in rural settings, tending to poultry or assisting in the dairy offered a valuable and sustainable means of contribution. These were roles that relied on patience, observation, and a gentle touch, rather than brute strength. A poultry keeper's duties were primarily about nurturing and observing the flock. This meant rising with the sun, but not for heavy labor. The first task was often releasing the birds from their nighttime coops, which protected them from foxes and other predators. This involved unbarring a simple wooden door and allowing the birds to roam freely within a designated enclosure. Then came the collection of eggs. This delicate task required careful handling to avoid breakage and a keen eye to spot where hens might have laid their clutch. An older, perhaps slower-moving individual would be perfectly suited to this methodical search, bending carefully, not rushing. The eggs were a crucial source of protein and income, and their careful collection was paramount. A household ledger from a rural estate in Warwickshire dated 1365 details weekly payments to Agnes the hen woman specifically for her diligent egg collection, noting the consistent high quantity and low breakage rate. Feeding the flock was another routine task. This involved scattering grain, often a mix of barley or oats, or distributing kitchen scraps. It wasn't a task of lifting heavy sacks, but rather a measured distribution to ensure the birds were well fed but not wasteful. Water troughs needed to be refilled, and this might involve carrying small buckets of water from a nearby well or stream, a manageable task for an older person. The overall health of the birds was under the keeper's watchful eye. Any signs of illness, unusual behavior, or decline in egg production would be noted and reported to the manor, lord or mistress. This required an intimate knowledge of the animals, built over years of quiet observation, an expertise often found in those who had lived a long time around livestock. Identifying a sick bird before an entire flock was infected could save valuable resources. For a dairy assistant, the work centered around the consistent, gentle handling of milk and its products. Milking itself, while not extremely strenuous, did require a certain rhythm and hand strength. However, many aspects of dairy work were far less demanding. After the fresh milk was brought in, it often needed to be strained to remove any impurities. This involved pouring it through a cloth filter, a task requiring careful, steady hands. The milk would then be stored in cool places, often cellars or spring houses, to prevent spoilage. An assistant might be tasked with carrying smaller pitchers or wooden bowls of milk to the storage areas, or perhaps churning butter. Churning, while repetitive, did not require immense strength. Rather, it required sustained, rhythmic motion, a task an older person could perform while seated or standing comfortably. The end result was a valuable product that could be stored for longer periods than fresh milk. A monastic chronicle from Fountains Abbey, circa 1410, describes how Sister Mary of advanced years was solely responsible for the daily churning of butter, renowned for its consistent quality. Cheese-making was another process that required patience and precision more than strength. After the milk was curdled, using rennet, the curds needed to be separated from the whey. This involved careful cutting of the curds and then gently pressing them to expel the liquid. While larger cheese presses might be heavy, many smaller operations used simpler methods, like placing weights on top of a cloth-bound curd, which an assistant could manage. Turning the cheeses regularly as they aged, cleaning the aging shelves, and ensuring the correct temperature and humidity in the cheese room were all vital tasks demanding attention to detail and consistency. These were not jobs for the hurried or the careless. Both roles often involved a profound understanding of animal cycles and natural rhythms, knowledge that only accumulated over many years. When hens were brooding, when cows were pregnant, when a goat was nearing its kidding, these were crucial pieces of information for the successful operation of a household or manor. The gentle conversations with the animals, the quiet routines, and the immense value of the products they helped create made these roles not just suitable but often preferred for individuals who had lived long and gathered much wisdom. The steady presence of an older individual brought a calm and reliable atmosphere to these essential food production areas, ensuring consistency and quality in a world where food scarcity was a constant concern. Number 6. The subtle craft of the brewer's assistant, or alewife's aide. Ale was the universal beverage of the medieval world, consumed by everyone from infants to the elderly, often safer than water and a source of calories. Brewing was a common household activity, especially for women, who were often known as alewives. In larger manors, monasteries, or commercial breweries, the scale of production demanded more hands, while the initial mashing of grains and lifting of heavy barrels required significant strength. Many other aspects of the brewing process were perfectly suited for individuals who possessed a keen sense of observation, attention to detail, and a well-developed palate rather than youthful vigor. These roles, often overlooked in the grand narrative of medieval industry, were crucial for the quality and consistency of the final product. One of the most vital tasks for a brewer's assistant was the careful monitoring of the fermentation process. Once the wort, the sugary liquid extracted from the malted grains, was cooled and yeast was added, the magic began. Fermentation was a living process, dependent on temperature, time, and the health of the yeast. An experienced assistant would spend hours observing the vats, noting the bubbling activity, the smell, and the formation of foam on the surface. They might be tasked with gently skimming impurities from the top or stirring the mixture at specific intervals. This was a patient, watchful role, requiring a calm temperament and a sharp sense of smell and sight. A brew gone bad could lead to wasted ingredients and effort, so this oversight was critical. A ledger from a London brewery around 1380 mentions goodwife Eleanor, whose main duty was the watching of the wort, a testament to the specific value placed on this observational skill. Another important job involved the preparation of ingredients. While the heavy bags of malted barley might be moved by younger apprentices, the assistant might be responsible for tasks like grinding smaller quantities of grain, crushing hops, or preparing adjuncts, bicony or spices that were added to special brews. These tasks often involved hand mills or mortars and pestles, requiring dexterity and precision rather than strength. The quality of the finished ale depended on the accurate measurement and proper preparation of these ingredients. An older individual, perhaps with a lifetime of experience in kitchen work or herbal remedies, would excel at this methodical approach, ensuring consistency in each batch. The cleanliness of the brewing equipment was also paramount. Medieval brewing relied on preventing contamination, a challenge without modern sanitation. An assistant might be responsible for scrubbing the wooden vats, barrels, and tools with hot water and brushes after each use. This required thoroughness and attention to detail, reaching into every nook and cranny. While demanding, it was not necessarily a heavy lifting job, but one that rewarded meticulousness and a methodical approach. Ensuring every surface was scrupulously clean was a preventive measure against spoiled batches, a significant economic loss. For an alewife's aid, especially in a household setting, duties might extend to serving the ale to customers, often from a small local tavern or directly from the home. This involved pouring from pitchers, managing small coin transactions, and interacting with the community. It was a social role that benefited from a friendly demeanor and a good memory for regulars and their preferences. Trustworthiness was also a key attribute, as they would be handling the household's income from the ale sales. Older individuals, often known and respected in the community, would naturally command this trust. A record from a Winchester town court in 1375 mentions a dispute resolved by the testimony of Marjorie, known for her steady hand and honest measure at the alehouse, highlighting the public trust placed in such figures. Perhaps the most refined task, and one that absolutely benefited from experience, was the tasting and quality control of the ale. Before a batch was sold or served, it needed to be sampled. This was not merely a pleasant indulgence, but a critical assessment. An experienced palate could detect subtle off flavors, signs of spoilage, or inconsistencies from previous batches. This sensory skill, honed over years of tasting, was invaluable. A brewer's assistant, with a well-developed sense of taste, could save an entire batch from being ruined or identify problems early. They might also be responsible for ensuring the ale was served at the correct temperature and in clean vessels, contributing to the customer's overall experience and the establishment's reputation. The quiet hum of the brewery, the earthy scent of malt, and the specific duties that required patience, observation, and sensory acuity provided a stable and valued role for those whose physical vigor had begun to wane, but whose wisdom and refined senses were at their peak. Number 5. The trusted hand of the keeper of the accounts, or manor steward's clerk. In a world without calculators or widespread literacy, the management of finances, resources, and legal agreements was a complex and crucial undertaking. Every manor, large household, monastery, and merchant enterprise needed meticulous record-keeping. While the manor steward or merchant himself held the ultimate responsibility, the actual day-to-day work of tallying, documenting, and transcribing often fell to a trusted clerk. This was a position that demanded not physical strength, but rather sharp mental acuity, meticulous attention to detail, reliability, and, above all, trustworthiness. These qualities were often found in individuals who had lived long and accumulated a lifetime of experience, perhaps from a previous career in a trade or church. The primary duty of the keeper of the accounts or manor steward's clerk was the meticulous recording of all transactions. This involved noting every incoming payment, whether in coin, goods, or labor, and every outgoing expenditure from wages to purchases of supplies. It was not simply a matter of numbers, it involved recording the details of each transaction. Who paid what, when, and for what purpose. This required a steady hand to write on parchment or vellum, careful penmanship to ensure legibility, and an unwavering focus to prevent errors. A medieval accounting roll from a monastic estate in Yorkshire, dated 1349, attributes its remarkable clarity to the steady hand of Brother Alaric, who served as clerk for 4 decades, a testament to the longevity and skill required. Beyond simple financial transactions, the clerk was often responsible for maintaining detailed inventories of the manor's assets. This included livestock, grain stores, tools, and even household furnishings, regularly updating these lists, noting births and deaths of animals, harvests of crops, and the acquisition or disposal of equipment ensured the lord or lady had a clear picture of their wealth. This was a task of observation, verification, and painstaking transcription, requiring a keen eye for detail and an orderly mind. An older individual, perhaps one who had served the manor for many years, would already possess an intimate knowledge of its assets and workings, making them ideally suited to this inventory management. The clerk also played a vital role in legal and administrative matters. They would transcribe charters, land grants, legal judgments, and agreements made between individuals or with the manor lord. These documents formed the legal backbone of medieval society. The clerk had to ensure absolute accuracy, as any error could have significant consequences. This involved listening carefully to dictation, understanding the nuances of legal language, and translating it into a permanent written record. This task benefited greatly from a lifetime of exposure to such documents and a deep understanding of local customs and laws. A 14th century record book from the manor of Wakefield notes that Master John, the clerk whose memory stretches back to the time of the previous lord, serves as our living law book, indicating the profound trust placed in their accumulated knowledge. The confidential nature of many of these documents meant that trustworthiness was paramount. The clerk often had access to sensitive financial information, private agreements, and details of disputes. An individual known for their integrity and discretion, often gained through a long life of honorable conduct, would be highly valued in such a position. They were often seen as impartial record keepers, whose duty was to the truth of the transaction, not to any particular party involved. Their advanced age could also imply a reduced personal ambition, further cementing their perceived reliability. The working environment for such a clerk was often quiet and scholarly, perhaps a dedicated chamber in the manor house or monastery. Their tools were quill, pens, ink, and carefully prepared parchment. The work was mentally demanding, requiring concentration for long hours, but rarely physically strenuous. It was a sedentary role, perfectly suited for someone whose physical capabilities might be diminishing, but whose mental faculties remained sharp and whose wisdom was highly valued. They were the unsung archivists of their time, preserving the economic and legal fabric of medieval society through their diligent and trustworthy hands. Their contributions, though not marked by heroic deeds, were foundational to the stability and prosperity of the entities they served, and their quiet influence was far-reaching within the community. Number 4. The enchanting voice of the bard or storyteller. In a time before widespread literacy, before printed books and radio, the spoken word was the primary medium for entertainment, news, history, and moral instruction. The bard or storyteller held a revered position in medieval society, particularly in feasting halls, market squares, and even humble cottages. This occupation was not about physical prowess or youthful agility. It was about memory, charisma, wisdom, and the ability to weave tales that captivated an audience. These were qualities that deepened with age, making the role of the storyteller particularly suited for older individuals who had accumulated a lifetime of experiences and narratives. A bard's primary tool was their voice and their memory. They would recite epic poems, ballads of heroic deeds, moral allegories, and humorous anecdotes. These performances often lasted for hours, requiring immense stamina of voice and mind. The ability to recall long, complex narratives, complete with intricate rhymes and character voices, was a skill honed over decades. An older storyteller might have a repertoire built over a lifetime, encompassing stories passed down through generations, local legends, and even personal observations transformed into captivating narratives. A 13th century Welsh text, the Red Book of Hergest, contains many bardic poems attributed to various figures, and oral tradition suggests many of these were transmitted by bards of advanced years, highlighting the value of a comprehensive memory. Beyond memorization, the storyteller needed the ability to engage an audience. This involved not just recitation, but also performance, varying their tone, pace, and expression to draw listeners into the narrative. They might use gestures, subtle movements, or even simple props. This magnetic presence came from experience and an understanding of human emotion. An older storyteller, having lived through many of life's trials and joys, would possess a deeper well of empathy and insight, allowing them to imbue their stories with genuine emotion and resonance. Their silver hair and weathered faces might lend an air of authenticity and authority to tales of ancient heroes or distant lands. Storytellers often served as living historians. They preserved the lineage of noble families, the battles won, and the significant events of a region. They were the keepers of the collective memory of a community. Their accounts might not be perfectly objective by modern standards, but they provided a vital link to the past, reminding people of their heritage and identity. This role demanded accuracy within the oral tradition and a vast knowledge of local history and folklore, qualities that only time could provide. A chronicle from a Scottish clan, dated around 1360, sometimes a storyteller would also compose new material, adapting existing tales to current events or creating fresh narratives inspired by their surroundings. This required creativity, a keen observation of human nature, and an understanding of what resonated with their audience. An older individual, having witnessed countless human dramas, would possess a rich understanding of human foibles and triumphs, which could be expertly woven into new tales. They might also serve as an informal community elder, offering advice or perspective through their narratives, drawing on the wisdom embedded in the ancient stories. The performance spaces varied greatly. In a lord's hall, the storyteller might sit by the roaring fire, commanding attention during a feast. In a village common, they might gather a crowd with their booming voice. Their travel might be limited, often based within a single community or manor, or they might move between patrons. Regardless, the physical demands were minimal compared to other trades. The occupation centered on the mind, the voice, and the ability to connect with people on an emotional and intellectual level. This made it an ideal and highly respected role for older individuals whose accumulated wisdom and vast repertoire of tales made them invaluable sources of entertainment, education, and cultural preservation in a world hungry for stories. Number 3. The dedicated hands of the spinster. The word spinster in modern times often carries a negative connotation, referring to an unmarried woman past a certain age. However, in the medieval period, the term literally meant one who spins. Spinning thread was an absolutely essential and constant occupation, underpinning the entire medieval textile industry, from the humblest peasant's tunic to the most elaborate noble's gown. It was a skill often learned in childhood and practiced throughout life. For older women, particularly those who were unmarried, widowed, or whose children had grown spinning, provided a stable home-based means of livelihood often conducted within the community. It was a task that required patience, dexterity, and a steady hand, not physical strength, making it ideally suited for those of advanced years. The process of spinning involved taking raw fibers, most commonly wool but also flax for linen or occasionally silk, and drawing them out and twisting them into a continuous strand of yarn or thread. The most common tool was the drop spindle, a simple wooden stick with a weight at the bottom, spun by hand. Later, the spinning wheel, though still often hand-cranked, made the process more efficient. Regardless of the tool, the spinner had to maintain a consistent tension and speed, drawing out the fibers evenly to produce a smooth, strong thread. This was a repetitive task, often performed for many hours a day, demanding focus and a rhythmic motion. A steady hand, developed over decades of practice, was far more valuable than youthful vigor. A detailed description from the Book of Household Management by Walter Bibsworth from the 13th century repeatedly emphasizes the need for a steady hand for spinning fine threads, pointing towards accumulated skill. Many older women, having managed households and families for decades, possessed this precise skill in abundance. They could sit by the fire, in a sunny doorway, or join other women in a communal spinning circle, quietly working while conversing. This often provided a social outlet as well as an income. The product of their labor thread was always in demand. It could be sold directly, traded for other goods, or used to weave cloth for their own families. For a woman living alone, spinning offered an independent livelihood, allowing her to contribute economically to the community and avoid destitution. Manor records from various English villages often show payments to Widow Marjorie for yarn or Old Bertha's thread in their account books, indicating a direct financial contribution through their spinning work. Beyond the basic spinning, some older women might specialize in producing finer, more delicate threads, or working with more challenging fibers. Fine linen thread, for instance, required extremely precise work and a very gentle touch to draw out the flax fibers without breaking them. Such specialization often commanded a higher price and reflected a lifetime of refined skill. They might also be responsible for preparing the raw materials, such as cleaning and carding wool to straighten the fibers before spinning. While carding involved some physical effort, it was a rhythmic motion, and an older woman with vast experience could do it efficiently and meticulously, ensuring the wool was perfectly prepared for the spindle. The reliability and consistency of an older spinner were highly valued. They were less likely to be distracted by youthful pursuits or family formation, and their work ethic was often well established. A consistent output of high-quality thread was crucial for weavers and other textile workers down the supply chain. For many medieval women, spinning was not just an occupation. It was a fundamental part of their identity and contribution to society. A role that often provided purpose and financial independence well into their later years. Their quiet, diligent work truly formed the very fiber of medieval life, though often unheralded in the larger historical narratives. Number 2. The keen eyes of the herbalist. In an age without modern medicine, the knowledge of plants and their healing properties was a cornerstone of healthcare. The herbalist, often an older woman, was a vital member of any community, whether in a bustling town, a quiet village, or within the walls of a monastery. This was a profession built on observation, memory, patience, and a deep practical understanding of the natural world, qualities that ripened with age and experience. It was a role that required intellectual acuity and careful work rather than physical strength, making it highly suitable for individuals who had seen many years pass. A primary duty of the herbalist was the identification and collection of medicinal plants. This required an encyclopedic knowledge of local flora, knowing where specific plants grew when they were in season, and how to differentiate between similar-looking species, some of which could be poisonous. This knowledge was typically accumulated over decades, passed down through oral tradition, and refined through personal observation and trial. An older herbalist often possessed a mental map of the surrounding landscape, identifying optimal spots for finding rare or potent herbs. This wasn't about rapid movement, but careful, methodical foraging, often bending and kneeling, requiring patience and a discerning eye. A medieval medical text from the Tequinum Sanitatis, a 14th century health handbook, frequently depicts elderly individuals in the process of gathering herbs, suggesting this common association. Beyond collection, the herbalist was skilled in the preparation of remedies. This involved drying herbs properly to preserve their potency, grinding them into powders, mixing them into poultices, infusing them in oils or wines, or boiling them into decoctions. Each process required precision and specific techniques to ensure the medicine was effective and safe. Measuring ingredients accurately, stirring mixtures at the right temperature, and storing the finished products correctly were all tasks that demanded careful hands and an unwavering attention to detail. An older individual, perhaps with a lifetime of experience in cooking or domestic tasks, would possess the refined motor skills and patience necessary for these intricate preparations. A household account from a manor in Kent, circa 1395, mentions payments to Mistress Alice, the village healer, specifically for her ointments and potions of great effect, highlighting the practical value of her prepared remedies. Diagnosis and prescription were perhaps the most crucial aspects of the herbalist's role. When someone fell ill, they would describe their symptoms to the herbalist. The herbalist would then draw upon their vast knowledge to determine the most appropriate remedy. This involved listening intently, asking probing questions, and observing the patient. It was a role of counsel and quiet authority, where trust was paramount. The herbalist often served as a confidant, and their advice was respected not just for its medicinal value, but for the wisdom and experience it carried. An older herbalist, having witnessed countless illnesses and life cycles, would offer a calming presence and integral guidance, often drawing on traditional lore and personal anecdotes about previous cures. This was not a quick consultation, but often a series of visits requiring the herbalist's steady presence and ongoing observation of the patient's progress. Some herbalists might also cultivate their own medicinal gardens, a task that, while involving some light physical activity like weeding and planting, primarily required knowledge of horticulture and plant needs. They would know the optimal soil conditions, watering schedules, and light requirements for each species. This constant interaction with the natural world kept their knowledge fresh and their skills sharp. The aroma of dried herbs, the earthy scent of the garden, and the quiet dignity of providing essential care made the herbalist a valued and often revered figure whose profound knowledge and experience were indispensable to the health and well-being of the medieval community. Their quiet work, often performed from a small, fragrant cottage, was a lifeline for many seeking solace and healing. Number 1. The steady pen of the scribe or illuminator. In the medieval world, literacy was a rare and precious skill, largely confined to monastic orders, the clergy, and a select few within royal or noble courts. Books were not printed. They were painstakingly copied by hand. The scribe, or for those with artistic flair, the illuminator, held a profoundly important and respected position, preserving knowledge, creating beautiful works of art, and ensuring the continuity of learning. This occupation demanded immense patience, unwavering concentration, steady hands, and meticulous attention to detail. Qualities often refined and perfected through a lifetime of dedication, making it an ideal and fulfilling role for older individuals. The primary duty of a scribe was the accurate copying of texts. This could range from religious scriptures and liturgical books to legal documents, scientific treatises, and classical literature. Each letter had to be carefully formed, each word correctly spelled, and each line precisely aligned on the parchment or vellum. This was a slow, methodical process that could take months, even years, for a single book. It required sitting for long hours, maintaining perfect posture, and focusing intently on the source text. A scribe's hand, trained over decades, would possess the muscle memory and control necessary to produce consistent and legible script. A monastic record from St. Gall Abbey in the 9th century though earlier than the core medieval period, famously speaks of Brother Egbert, whose hand never falters even in his 75th year, highlighting the enduring skill of older scribes. For an illuminator, the task was even more intricate. They adorned the copied texts with intricate capital letters, decorative borders, and miniature illustrations. These artistic additions were not merely decorative. They enhanced understanding, emphasized key passages, and transformed a manuscript into a work of art. The work required an intimate knowledge of pigments often ground from minerals or plants, and the ability to apply them with extreme precision using fine brushes. This involved delicate work under often dim natural light, requiring excellent eyesight and a steady hand. An older illuminator, with years of experience, would have mastered the complex techniques of layering colors, applying gold leaf, and creating minute, expressive figures. The Lindisfarne Gospels, a breathtaking example of insular art, stands as a testament to the meticulous labor of such artists, often believed to be older monks who dedicated their entire lives to this sacred craft. The working environment for a scribe or illuminator was typically a quiet scriptorium within a monastery, a cathedral, or a noble household. It was a sedentary occupation, often performed at a desk or lectern. The physical demands were minimal, focusing instead on mental endurance and fine motor skills. This made it highly suitable for individuals whose physical capabilities might have lessened with age, but whose intellectual sharpness and artistic skill remained undiminished or even enhanced by years of practice. The contemplative nature of the work often appealed to those seeking a life of quiet, scholarly pursuit. Beyond the physical act of writing or painting, scribes and illuminators were also custodians of knowledge. They often possessed a deep understanding of the languages they were copying, whether Latin, Greek, or emerging vernaculars. They might proofread texts, identify errors in existing manuscripts, or even translate works. Their extensive knowledge of literature and religious texts made them invaluable resources within their communities. Their role was not just mechanical, it was intellectual and spiritual. A medieval university register from Bologna, circa 1350, lists several venerable masters of the scriptorium, emphasizing their intellectual contributions beyond mere copying. The value placed on a well-copied or beautifully illuminated manuscript was immense. Each book was a treasure unique and irreplaceable. The dedication and skill of the scribes and illuminators ensured that knowledge was preserved and disseminated, shaping the intellectual and spiritual landscape of the medieval world. For an older individual, dedicating their later years to this profound and artistic pursuit offered a sense of lasting contribution and a quiet, dignified way to live out their days, their steady hands and keen eyes continually enriching the world, one meticulously crafted page at a time.